right, Michelle, what are you familiar with already?
Wrenches?
Yeah.
Phillips?
Yes, that's a Phillips head screwdriver.
Flathead.
Yes.
Also a Phillips?
Yes, also a Phillips.
Look at me go. Also a Phillips?
Also a Phillips.
And socket.
Yes, a socket driver.
And another socket thing.
They're both sockets. So I included a couple different sizes of each tool. So since I'm holding this, we'll start with this one. This is just a short screwdriver. It can be really helpful for getting into small, tight spaces, so it's worth having. And we've got a really tiny and a more common sized Phillips head screwdriver, because sometimes you're working with really little screws, like sometimes if you're trying to take off an outlet cover or something on your stove or behind your microwave. There's all sorts of little screws. And same with the flatheads. So I also brought the Allen wrench, which is a hexagon driver. So that will have special types of screws to go with it. You're not going to see those as often as you'll see the Phillips or the flathead. And the type of screw that goes with a flathead is called a slotted screw.
Wrenches are usually for furnaces.
Yeah, stuff like that. Absolutely. And then you have socket wrenches. Again, you're not going to use them as often around your home, but for example, I had to use one to unscrew the packaging from a new refrigerator. So there will be times that it's really handy to have one of these because it'll work a lot better than many other tools. So next, we're going to take a look at our wrenches. How familiar are you with a wrench?
Not as familiar.
So wrenches are often used for bolts and also just general loosening of things. This type of wrench is adjustable, so it's nice if you just have one of these at home instead of trying to have a whole set. But if you like something a little more consistent and exact, you can get a set of wrenches. So there's little ones and bigger ones. And they have their sizes marked on them, and the more familiar you get with different bolts and other types of materials, you'll get used to what size you need. Can you tell me what that's for?
I want to say it's a cage of some sort.
It is another type of socket wrench. It's also called a ratchet set. So you can attach your bit. The most common is 10 millimeter, and it attaches to the back. There you go. And then the cool thing about a ratchet set is it allows you to not go all the way around in a circle. So sometimes you're working in a tight space and you don't have room to spin your handle all the way around. So the way ratchets work is you just tighten and keep going in the same space. I think you'll know what this is, but can you tell me?
It is a tape measure.
Yes, a tape measure. One of the most useful measuring tools you'll have for doing any kind of project. If you don't have a tape measure, you should probably get one. Something that's cool about tape measures is that you can lock them so that they stay expanded, but they also have this little metal clip at the end, and it moves. And a lot of people think that it's broken when it does that, but it's actually designed to do that on purpose. That way, yeah, it moves. So you can push it against something, like if you push it against the wall, it'll give you an accurate measurement, or if you say catch it on the edge of a countertop to measure the countertop, it'll pull, and that will also give you a more accurate measurement than if it didn't move at all. So it moves just a little tiny bit, to help you get a more accurate measurement. Are you familiar with reading tape measures? With reading them?
Oh, yes.
Good. So there's different tick marks on the tape measure. Now, I can't really show you that well because of the camera we're using. It's backwards. But this one I liked because it has them labeled to make it quick and easy to see the smaller measurements of an inch. How about this one? This is a speed square. It's really helpful for doing straight lines, shorter straight lines, because it has this lip on it that will catch on the edge of, say, a board. So you can lay it on the board and you can have a straight line and you don't have to worry as much about it sliding around. Sometimes it's hard to also make sure that it's actually straight, but this lip will make sure it is because it can clip and it'll stay. Versus just using a flat straight edge that slides around and you have to try to use your eye to line up on the edge of something. Something else that it can do is a lot of them will have a pivot point. Let me see if this one's labeled with it. Yeah, this corner is the pivot point. And so what you can do is you can line it up with whatever line you draw, and then you can turn it to match a certain angle so that you can draw your angle. So you can have a line here, and then if you want a 45-degree angle, you just move it until the 45 degree is at the edge of whatever your surface is, and there you go. You can draw another line. There's some more specific jobs of these other marks on the square, but for basic use, it's really good for just drawing angles and straight lines. Are you familiar with this?
That is a level.
Yes, and having a little level is super helpful.
It's bad when you put a shelf up in it.
Absolutely. As you can maybe see, our table is not level. The little bubbles do not go where they're supposed to. So you want the little bubble inside of it to be in between those two lines, as even as possible. It's hard to do while holding up. The cool thing about this little level is it's magnetic, and that can come in handy when you're trying to level something like a microwave, or if you're working in the kitchen in general. So having a magnetic strip can be really helpful so that you don't have to hold it up if you're working with metal of any kind. All right, are you familiar with what this is?
Is that a stud finder?
It is a stud finder.
Hey!
What do you use a stud finder for?
To find studs in the wall so you can hang up the picture.
Absolutely.
And we'll set firmware on the wall.
Yes. You want to use studs as much as possible because that's the most secure place to hang something. We can talk about later what you do if you cannot find a stud. All stud finders work a little bit differently, but for the most part, you just sweep them across the wall and they'll beep to tell you that you found a stud.
They come in much handier than the old version of knocking on the wall.
Yes, you can be a lot more sure and accurate with a stud finder than just knocking on the wall. Also, stud finders are only useful if you're in a timber building. So if there's, like this building that we're in right now is cinder block, you can't use a stud finder on cinder block. It's for, most houses are wood and drywall. So, can you tell me what this is for? This is a drywall saw. It's also called a keyhole saw. I included it in this video because it's really useful for fixing big holes in drywall. So if somebody, say, slams a door and the doorstop just broke for some reason and didn't work or wasn't there at all, and it puts a big dent in the wall and punches through the drywall, it's easier to fix a square opening than it is a circle. So you can cut around the hole and make a nice clean square to then either be filled with mesh, just a little bit more spackle if it's a small hole, or you can use another piece of drywall that you cut into the shape of that and use that to patch it. this one?
It's a saw.
It is a saw. This is a hacksaw, and it's a really small one. They do come smaller. I like this size. It's good for getting into most small spaces. There are different kinds of blades that you can change out, and each blade will be labeled with if it's for plastic, metal, or wood. Some of them are for single materials, some of them are for multiple. But you need to make sure you read what they're for before trying to use them. The last time I used one of these, I used it to saw some rusted bolts from a toilet so that I could change the toilet seat cover. Sometimes toilets get really rusted because there isn't good ventilation, and sometimes you can't get the bolts out. So this can come in handy for doing things like that around the house. Now I'm sure you know what these are. Yes, I included this in kinds of what things you could have at home or should have at home. It's a good idea to have eye protection while you're working with anything above your head or anything that could fly off the wall. You don't want to get dust or particles in your eyes.
You could have used those last night when we were cranking tiles.
Yeah, that's an absolutely good reason to have eye protection. If you're going to be breaking anything, you should have your eyes protected. All right. So we've got these 3 tools. You recognize them?
Pliers.
Yes, they're types of pliers.
These are wrenches.
Nope, they're all pliers.
Oh.
Just to show you, reminder, this is a wrench. If you can see it, and these are pliers. So you see they all have kind of a different head, and pliers are used by clamping things. So this is a pair of lineman pliers. This is needle nose pliers. And these are slip joint pliers, and they're called that because you can adjust them a little bit by sliding them up and down on that little opening. So if you need a slightly larger, slightly smaller set.
It's doing pretty good right now.
They all start to run together. Another thing about pliers is that they often come with some sort of wire cutter inside of them as well. So that's just something to be aware of when you purchase pliers, that you could also have a pair of wire cutters. Generally, you use pliers to grasp onto things, make it a little easier to hold things. So they've got their place as well. All right. We have one of these. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, just Michelle and I, and it's a type of clamp. This is a really easy to use one. You want to give it a try? How do you think it works? You're on the right track. Yeah. So this is called a trigger clamp, and all you have to do is squeeze the handle, and you can make it go up. Now, Michelle, there's a little button right there. You press that, and you can slide it down. I think you squeeze the trigger as well. So you press it, squeeze, and now you can slide it up and down. You hold it like this.
Oh.
Yeah, so you shoot it, so you don't need the trigger. So this kind, you just go up and down.
Gotcha.
Make it a bigger or smaller opening. I like this kind of clamp because it's easy to use, and it can help make like a finer clamp than some other types. It's a little easier because you just squeeze the trigger, but it's a good idea to have clamps if you're doing anything that you need to cut, like if you're cutting a piece of wood or a board, just to hold it steady and to make sure it doesn't slide around, because when your material moves around on you, that's a risk for cutting yourself or cutting your floor or whatever surface you're working on. All right, something that you should all have handy at all times are some very basic things. I'm very sure you know what these are, Michelle, but can
Absolutely.
you tell me why you think it's important to have those in your toolbox?
Obviously, if you need to cut something.
Mhm.
And pens and pencils for if you have to mark something or write something down.
Yeah, exactly. So for things like marking measurements or where you want to put something, scissors come in handy because sometimes they cut materials better than knives do. And sometimes you can get a much more controlled straight cut. For example, if you're doing anything with contact paper or peel and stick flooring or wallpaper, those things will generally cut better with scissors than with a knife, unless it's really high quality and really thick. All right, and so I think this is one of our last items. We're almost done. So, can you tell me what this is?
That is a utility knife.
Yes, a utility knife, and each utility knife is just a little bit different, but ultimately they all have a blade that slides up. And these are really nice to have on hand because you don't know when you're going to need to cut something. But something else that's nice about them is it allows you to score a surface and then break it. Sometimes it'll give you a cleaner break than just trying to cut it will. And are you familiar with jigs at all?
No.
Okay. A jig is just a tool to help you either cut something, measure something, or in this case, this is to drill holes in your cabinets. It's always worth checking to see if a jig exists if you need to do something like over and over again. So this serves as a template. And I've installed cabinet handles with these, and it's much easier and much faster, and you keep it consistent because all you have to do is clamp it onto the side of your cabinet, and then you decide how far apart your holes need to be. It has a spot that tells you when you're centered, and all you got to do is drill the holes for your screws. And the last thing I want to talk about today is a toolbox. This is just a really little tiny one that I bought. You can buy them at just about any hardware store. Lowe's has lots to choose from. They're not expensive. You can get them for about $10 just to get a small basic one. But a toolbox will help you keep your tools organized, safe, and so you can find them whenever you're doing a project. Do you keep all your tools together, Michelle?
No.
Exactly. And is that easy or difficult to do a project?
I try to keep them together. My children do not. So it's very difficult.
Yes. Toolboxes are great for when you have multiple people using the same tools.
As long as they put them back.
As long as they put them back. They're absolutely useless if you never put anything in them. But this will at least tell them where to put them. And if they don't put them in, that's their own. They can't claim that they don't know where to put them. So thank you for joining us. We hope that was helpful. And that's about it. Anything else, Michelle?
I think that we covered that.
Okay. Have a great day.